I want to share with you a true story about how an Airbus A300 tail fin got separated from its fuselage and caused the pilots to crash. The year was 2001, just 2 months after the World Trade Center attacks in New York. The flight was scheduled to depart from New York JFK Airport to Las Americas International Airport in Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. Let's talk about the pilot. The captain is a 42-year-old man and the first officer is aged 34 years old. On that day of the flight, there were 251 passengers and 9 crew members on board. The aircraft that they were using was an Airbus A300. It is the first wide-body aircraft ever built with a total of 561 planes that was produced from 1971 to 2007. This is also one of the last Airbus aircraft, including the Airbus A310 that has control yokes, similar to the ones that Boeing has nowadays. The Airbus aircraft is equipped with a side stick for you to go up, go down, turn left and turn right. Because this flight was after the 9/11 attacks, the security procedures was rather tedious and subsequently delayed the departure of the flight. The aircraft started pushing back from the gate. As the pilots taxied to runway 31 left, a Boeing 747-400, the Queen of the Skies, was taxiing ahead of them. That aircraft was bound for Narita International Airport in Tokyo, and so the Boeing 747 was lining up for takeoff. Air traffic control informs the pilots of the Airbus A300 that there will be a wake turbulence after the Boeing 747 departs. What is wake turbulence? It is the disturbance of air that is caused by an aircraft. Wingtip vortices can cause disturbance in the air. Also, jet wash gases that is expelled from a jet engine can cause the air to be not stable. According to procedures, a medium-sized aircraft have to wait for 2 minutes behind a heavy aircraft that is departing. In this case, both the A300 and Boeing 747 are categorized as heavy aircrafts. The Boeing 747 is cleared for takeoff. At 9:13 AM, the Queen of the Skies lifted off. As the Airbus A300 lined up for departure, the first officer asked the captain, "You happy with that distance?" which clearly referring to the distance between their aircraft and the Boeing 747. The captain replied, "We'll be alright once we get rolling." The first officer then said, "So you're happy? Lights?" The captain said, "Yeah, lights are on." Once the aircraft is cleared for takeoff, the first officer, who is pilot flying, sets takeoff thrust. At 9:14 AM, the Airbus A300 lifted off. ATC then told them to turn left and contact New York departure. The pilots then contacted New York departure and said that they are climbing out of 1,300 feet for 5,000 feet. New York departure then clears them to climb to 13,000 feet. At this point, while turning left, the pilots hears a brief squeak and a rattling sound that is probably caused by wake turbulence. The captain commented, "Wake turbulence, huh?" And the first officer said, "Yeah." About 15 seconds later, the Airbus A300 begins to yaw to the right. The first officer begins to apply full right and left rudder. First officer then told the captain, "Max power." The captain, looking at the first officer who is struggling with the controls, asked him whether he was alright. The first officer said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Once again, full right and left rudder was applied. The captain then said, "Hang on to it, hang on to it." The first officer replied, "Let's go for full power, please." At this point, the entire vertical tail separates and the aircraft entered an uncontrolled descent starting from about 2,400 feet. By this time, they were descending so rapidly that they are running out of time. The first officer exclaimed, "We are stuck in it." The captain then shouted, "Get out of it! Get out of it!" It was quite impossible to control the aircraft because it went into a flat spin. What is a flat spin? A spin that is flat. Because of the huge aerodynamic loads on the poor plane, the engines were sheared off the aircraft. The engine fell down from the sky and landed within 100 feet of each other.
Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up.
crashed right on Beach 131 Street, a Queens residential area. The crash is the second worst accident in US history. After the crash, the NTSB investigated into the accident and discovered that the aircraft took off immediately after the Boeing 747. It then flew into a larger jet wake where the air is very turbulent. The first officer tried to keep the aircraft stable with alternating aggressive rudder inputs, left, right. He overreacted by applying full left rudder, then followed by full right, then full left again. What happens when he does this? The force of air that is flowing against the moving rudder put a lot of stress on the aircraft vertical stabilizer, and eventually the whole thing snapped off entirely. Once this happened, the aircraft has no control of the aircraft and crashed. All 251 passengers and 9 crew members perished. The thing that we need to understand is this: the Airbus vertical stabilizer was designed to withstand 100 pounds of pressure. The action that the first officer did on the rudders put 200 pounds of pressure on the tail fin, which is double the force of pressure. The National Transportation Safety Board (NTSB) concluded that the enormous stress on the vertical stabilizer was due to the first officer's unnecessary and excessive rudder inputs and not by the wake turbulence caused by the Boeing 747. The NTSB further stated that if the first officer had stopped making additional inputs, the aircraft would have stabilized. When interviewed, the previous captains who have flown with the first officer reported that he had reacted aggressively to wake turbulence in the past. The investigators then found out a startling truth. The first officer in fact was taught to respond like that in trainings. The airline itself taught its pilots on how to respond to unrealistic wake turbulence scenarios. The pilots are taught on aggressive recovery procedures which would stress an aircraft in real life. And so, after the crash, the airline changed its training syllabus with regards to the wake turbulence. NTSB reported that the cause of accident was due to these factors. Number 1 is the first officer's tendency to overreact to wake turbulence. Number 2 is that the training provided by the airline could have encouraged the pilots to use the rudders or flight controls aggressively. And number 3 is that the first officer's understanding of the plane was flawed. Full rudder deflection of the rudder at high speed on a passenger plane will induce a roll on the aircraft. Number 4, that even small movements on the rudder pedals can lead to overcorrection in the air. It is important to remember that the Airbus A300 and Airbus A310 do not operate on a fly-by-wire flight control system. Instead, they use a conventional mechanical flight control system. Because of this, the NTSB insisted that the Airbus A300-600 rudder control system was vulnerable to unnecessary excessive rudder inputs. Procedures were changed after the accident. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.